And a good Tuesday dual practice day on Birds 365. You got your Mac guys here on Birds 365 for a quick 2 hours. We're going to fly through the 2 hours. It's going to be like an eagle practice, the rapidity with which we make our way through the 2 hours. Don't know if we'll color code it ahead of time or
orange.
After the fact.
Let's go orange.
We're going orange. You liked the orange the other day,
Let's
huh,
go,
Johnny?
yeah,
Mac?
let's go mauve. Let's go. I don't know. Yeah.
Is it mauve or mauve?
Mauve. I think it's mauve, but what do I know? I'm not a big color guy. Orange.
I've been known to mispronounce some things in my day, but I think you got mauve wrong. But that's just me. We won't. Well, then let's start right there. After the fact, there's Eagles put a color practice on it before they get underway. After the fact, what color would you paint the Eagles Browns joint practice after the fact, purely from an Eagle perspective?
It wasn't good, so I shouldn't say that. It was about even, but I would say both defenses beat both offenses, which surprised me, to be honest. I would have expected the opposite on both ends. So I don't think it was a good day for the offenses for either team. And it was a little bit of a surprise from the Eagles' perspective because I think it was all tied to the inability to handle Myles Garrett in the Cleveland front, which is always not with Myles because that guy can play, man. And you're not game planning, remember. So if you're preparing for the Browns, you're spending all week trying to essentially block Myles Garrett. That's where you start, right? And they're just leaving poor Jordan Mailata out there to deal with him one-on-one. And, he probably by himself blew up 5 or 6 different reps offensively. That's how dominant he was and is. And that can make the offense look bad. And same thing with the Cleveland offense. The defensive front of the Eagles completely dominated them. So we're talking about 2 of the 5 best offensive lines in football got pretty beat up, both literally and figuratively on the football field. And Jack Conklin had to leave, is in the concussion protocol. Landon Dickerson had to leave, undisclosed injury. Jason Kelce got banged up at the end of practice, but he's fine, so don't panic. Yeah, they got their what's handed to them on both sides of the football. So it was, we joke around because the Eagles are the undisputed joint practice champions until Miami beat them. And I used the Jody Mack. I'm going to give you credit. Because I said that's a draw. And I said, I like your exercise when we pick wins and losses. If you had to go one up or you had to go one down. So I did that. If I had to pick somebody, I'd pick Cleveland. So 51-49. But it was kind of an ugly practice from an offensive standpoint.
And last year they ran a joint practice against Cleveland as well. And I remember us, I think, saying virtually the same thing, that it was pretty much of a draw of a practice. Eagles at one point were 5-0 in joint practices. They went 4-0 in Nick's first year. They beat Cleveland the first day in Cleveland. Second day, a draw, or if you had to make it a call, you probably would have gone Cleveland. And if that's the case, yeah, they're 5-0 at one point. You make the argument they've lost the last 3 because Cleveland could have beaten them the second one last year. Miami beat them badly. They only had one because the flu went through the Dolphin locker room the next day and they canceled it. And if they got beat yesterday, it was nice that they started 5-0 in the Sirianni era, but you make an argument they've lost 3 in a row, could you not?
Well, I mean, I when I say wins and losses, and I'll give it to too much Elliott Shore-Parks mentioning this week. I'll give it to him. He's the one who started. We say it tongue in cheek. I mean, that's not what practice is about, winning and losing. They're not trying to win, or both teams are trying to lose. But from my perspective, it's who looks more impressive And, because like I said, I use Myles Garrett as a example. Like you're doing literally, you start when you play the Cleveland Browns offensively. All right, how do we block Myles Garrett? That's your whole focus. And you don't do that in practice. You're not game planning for that specific, like the Browns had a real difficult time with Dallas Goedert. That was um pretty much the only constant with the Eagles offense when they were able to get a playoff. They couldn't deal with Dallas Goedert. Um, and if they were game planning for the Eagles, they'd figure out pretty quickly we got some issues with Dallas Goedert, and they try to tweak some things and try to minimize it. So it works both ways. Um, but yeah, as far as who looks more impressive, slight, very slight edge to the Browns. And I would say, again, both offenses were pretty disappointing. If you would ask me yesterday to predict, all right, who's going to look good, I would have said the offenses. The exact opposite happened.
That's not the way it played down in South Philly yesterday. You just said Dallas Goedert, a couple of big plays yesterday, looking at times unstoppable. Read a couple other Eagle beat guys reports, and they concurred that Goddard was maybe the Eagles' the best offensive player yesterday. And we know that Dallas Goedert is that good, and we expect him to be that good over the course of the rest of the year. How about the rest of the Eagle tight ends? They got a bunch in camp. Everyone seems to be leaning towards Stoll is going to make it purely because he's the best blocking tight end they have on the roster, not named Dallas Goedert, maybe. But then there's four other guys in camp who are looking to either be the third tight end or a guy who's going to be part of the practice squad who could be moved up and down depending on needs and injuries and the like. Yesterday and just overall throughout the camp, how do you rate the guys who are fighting for a tight end roster spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wide open, but right now, if you had, Jack's going to make the team. I mean, to me, it's who's after Jack Stoll. He's solidified, and then it comes down to the tight end 3, and right now it looks like chalk. It looks like Brand Calcaterra is going to, one of the players I've been, I don't want to say disappointed, but surprised and hasn't showed up is Dan Arnold, because I thought he might be relevant. Really haven't seen much from him. Tyree Jackson's kind of Tyree Jackson. He'll make a splash play every now and again because of his size and his athleticism, but the consistency isn't there. So right now it's kind of Grant Calcaterra by default. Not that he's done that much, but the other guys haven't seized the opportunity. And, somebody like Brady Russell's way down on the depth chart. Not, he's more of a potential practice squad candidate. That could be a position they scan the waiver wire and say, maybe somebody cuts loose somewhere else and they bring him in. They did it with Dalton Keene a couple times last year, had him in again. Yeah, he didn't make the team ultimately. They put him on the practice squad. But you might see them go outside the organization to try to find some competition for Grant Calcaterra, because I don't think Arnold is pushing him. I don't think Tyree Jackson. Now, Arnold is such a veteran, maybe they'll default to that, but I haven't seen it to this point.
I thought of you immediately when he made a catch against the Ravens in the preseason game, because you did early in camp sing his praises that, hey, anything that goes his way, he catches. He just has got really good hands, and he's great at catching the ball. But on that play, all he had to do was make one move, and he was going to get a first down. It was like a 3rd and 8, and he caught a ball 6 yards down the field, and he couldn't shake the tackle. He couldn't make a move around the tackle. He got tackled immediately after the catch and ended up being a 4th down, and they had to punt anyway. I know that Arnold's been in the league for years, but I really honestly don't remember him. Not that he can't make plays, but I don't remember making any plays when I was watching his team, and he's jumped to a couple different teams at any time. And I say, all right, well, let's see if he can make a move. he didn't. So that was a little disappointing from the game against the Ravens, and apparently didn't do much yesterday in the practice either. All right, the other offensive position where everybody's going to ask us this every day, John, on the stream, on WIP for me on nights if I'm on, running backs. How are they going to decide with the running backs? DeAndre Swift, one big play in the preseason game. I put him in bubble wrap. We think we know what he's got. There, Kenny Gainwell is, some people think, the de facto leader in the clubhouse for more snaps than anybody else. Rashad Penny got the most snap action in the game against the Ravens. Other than Boston Scott hasn't been a factor so far in the two activities, one game, one joint practice, that they've had against other teams. Any change in your thought process as to how the running backs are going to be used after these last couple of days?
No, I'm still, the two constants are Gainwell and Swift. They're going to be here. They're going to be a big part of it. And then it's to be determined. I don't think, Boston Scott is all that relevant when it comes to major touches, but he's a big part of special teams. And the Eagles are comfortable with him as a backup. So to me, he's the clear number 4. And then it's, can Trey Sermon push Rashad Penny off the roster? I haven't seen anything from Trey Sermon other than Nick Sirianni bringing him up. And by the way, even that, I mean, he brought him up in the offseason, but now, it's been people asking him about Trey Sermon because he brought him up in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been doing it unprompted any longer. So, to me, Penny's, as long as he stays healthy, he'll be that guy. But as far as how it shakes out as touches, I don't know. Like I said, high leverage situations, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. But does that mean on first and second down, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell? Like 20 to 20? No. But they seem to trust him the most. And again, if they're backed up, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. If they're in the red zone, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. If they're in hurry up, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. Unless something changes drastically between now in New England, I think it's going to be that. Now, who gets the majority of the touches from 20 to 20? I mean, Swift is exciting because you saw the juke in Baltimore. He's tremendous in the open field. But I just don't know if he can handle the workload. And Penny, when he's healthy for the 6 games he's healthy, you can give him the ball and feed him the ball because he's got size, he's got strength, he's got physicality. But how long is he going to stay healthy? I think that's a low-key problem for the Eagles running back. The assumption that, whatever 200 and however many touches Miles had last year, that's easily replaceable by a collaboration of 4,
right?
I think is, boy, I don't like that philosophy. I don't like it. I don't like that philosophy.
Oh, I don't like it because it's a question mark. I'm not saying it can't be answered yes. It could certainly be answered yes. And the 4 of them could balance it out, and it could be a shared effort, and it could be fine. But you can't tell me that it's going to be fine. So that makes it a question mark, and you don't like question marks going into the season. And I think the Eagles, I wouldn't call it a problem. I wouldn't call it a hole, but I'd call it a question mark. And I think you're right to be legitimately questioning if the Eagles are going to be as good in the backfield. And the other thing about Gainwell, you said you think he's going to be the high leverage guy. Again, people have it's gotten my goat a little bit when people say, "Oh, he had that great playoff run." No, he had that great playoff game. He was great against the Giants. The game against San Francisco, he was okay. And yeah, he got more touches than Miles Sanders did in the Super Bowl because Miles kind of screwed the pooch the first time he got his hands on the ball. He should have gone straight up the field. Instead, he tried to bounce it outside. Bad.
He also, that's what gets my goat. Miles also was hurt.
And got hurt. Yeah, I was good to that.
Yeah.
He got hurt in the game. So Kenny Gainwell got more touches than they did. that to me doesn't equate to, oh, Kenny Gainwell had the great playoff run. No, he had a great game. The Eagles played 3 postseason games. Kenny Gainwell was average to mediocre in 2 out of the 3. One of them, he's great. One of them made big plays. But the whole narrative of, oh, Kenny Gainwell.
Well, that stems from the Eagles. The Eagles were very happy with Kenny Gainwell in the playoffs. The juice, not necessarily what he brought to the offense. I think a lot of it had to do, and this is the part that gets my, not only in the Super Bowl, Miles Sanders was playing hurt before the Super Bowl. He had a knee problem. He was playing with a brace for the last couple games of the season. Finally took it off in the playoffs, but he wasn't the same physically. And that's why Kenny Gainwell got more touches. It wasn't like they were saying, oh, Kenny's looking better than Miles. Kenny's a better player than Miles. Miles was hurt. He was hurt. And that's why his touches went up. And that's the part that gets my goat. Now, when people say it again, that's because the Eagles did. The Eagles have said it consistently behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. They liked the way Kenny played in the playoffs. You know, during the regular season, he wasn't good. They were disappointed, and he didn't take a step forward. And then he kind of showed up. And again, it's not even about the production. It's about, if you watch the film, he did show a sort of burst that wasn't there. And he did look impressive. And that's why they got excited about it. But he didn't I've seen that so much. He didn't overtake Miles Sanders.
No.
Miles Sanders was banged up. That's what it was about. And that's what I'm saying. People turn the page quickly on good football players. I'm not saying Miles Sanders is great, but he is a good running back. And to assume that this group is going to replace Miles Sanders, I think is taking it too far. Is it possible? Anything's possible. But I don't see Miles Sanders in this group.
Nor do I. And you mentioned that the Eagles let it be known that they were quite happy with the way Kenny Gainwell played in the postseason. Did the level of their excitement raise after Miles Sanders signed with the Carolina Panthers? Or was it from the day after the Super Bowl?
No, it was from the day. It was during the run. It wasn't, post Miles Sanders.
Okay. You know that better than me. You're around him all the time. You're a beat guy. I'm not. So I'll take your word for that. But just a quick reminder, Eagles fans who think good riddance to bad rubbish with Miles Sanders. 11 touchdowns last year. Not 4, not 8, not 10. 11 Miles Sanders touchdowns that need to be replaced this year. Might not be as easy sledding as some people think. All right, Jody McDonald, John McMullen, a.k.a. Mac here with you on Birds 365. We are scheduled to be joined by our buddy Les Bowen, whose podcast, Bowen on the Birds, is a good watch for all you Eagle fans out there. I was supposed to send Les a reminder text, and I just realized I haven't sent it to him yet. So we're hoping, after our first time out, that Les is ready to rock and roll with us here on Birds 365.